So Joe Biden, by the time you're watching this, has probably had his State of the Union address, and he might have touched on a few things. He might not have touched on a few things. He might have pointed out some positive things. For all I know, he might have pardoned Julian Assange, which, by the way, Joe Biden, if you're watching this right now and you have not pardoned Julian Assange, you must do so immediately, because that man is he's a war hero when it comes to the war between the people of the United States and the deep state. But that's neither here nor there. What I'm here to talk about is, what is the State of the Union? Now, State of the Union addresses are usually indictments on how a president has been doing when it comes to his presidency, how he's been handling things, taking care of things. Now, there are certain things I am going to exclude because they don't necessarily affect the citizens of the United States. And when it comes to the State of the Union, it's like, well, how's America doing? We fled Afghanistan, for example, in a very disastrous way, but that doesn't really make the state of the American Union particularly worse, right? We've got stuff going on overseas in Russia and Ukraine. It's not affecting us too much. At least I don't really feel the immediate effects of that right now. We've got the whole situation with Israel and Palestine. That's not really making America a worse place to live in. What I'm going to be focusing on is domestic policy, the economy, stuff like that. And to be honest, based on some of the rhetoric that you might have heard, I'm a conservative, so I do admit I listen to a lot of conservative media. I was frankly a little bit surprised at some of the indicators about the State of the Union. That said, the State of the Union is not particularly great, and I actually do have some of the bullet points here. So, like I mentioned, I did do all of my research. For one thing, for example, the inflation rate. So to be fair to Joe Biden, the inflation rate did decrease over time, and it has stabilized. Actually, if we zoom out here, we can get a better look of things. So Joe Biden took office at around January of 2021. So that would be about here. So he took office right about here, and we went up and then we went down. Now, thankfully, inflation has sort of stabilized after hitting about 3% here back in June, so 6 months ago. So I would say that inflation is very stable. But unfortunately, this is more than twice as high as it was when he took office. When he took office, it was at 1.4%. It is now at 3.09%. So while, yes, inflation is down, homie took it all the way up to Mount Everest and then brought it down halfway. You can't say going from 1.4% inflation to 3% inflation is that much of an accomplishment. So, inflation, when it comes to that, Joe Biden has not really done a great job to minimize the losses there. Now, that's not the only aspect of the State of the Union. We've also got the unemployment rate. Now, I think that the unemployment rate is actually probably the area in which Joe Biden has done the best, especially when you consider the fact that this huge spike here was largely due to COVID, and also more state policies than federal policies. So you can't really blame Trump or Joe Biden for that too much. Now, to be fair, look at Joe Biden right here. This is when he took office around that time. It was at, 10,196. I guess this is per capita or something. It's gone down exponentially all the way down to here. And I think part of that is post-COVID recovery, but it's still, a point to be made that far more people have jobs now. Now, maybe people don't have the jobs that they want, but they do have the jobs. They do have jobs now. And let's see, what's the lowest point down here? The lowest point down here is 5,792. We did graze those numbers. So we almost stabilized at around pre-COVID numbers, but now we're back up a little bit. Still not a significant increase considering where we once were. So I will give Joe Biden a W for that. Now, when it comes to, do people trust the government? Because I think, public sentiment is relatively important, right? And I think that there's certainly international stuff that, affects this, such as illegal immigration, such as, the stuff going on overseas that could potentially spark a World War III scenario. It almost seems like we're tiptoeing closer and closer every waking moment to a World War III scenario. In the midst of all of that, Joe Biden's numbers are pretty bad. Now, to be fair, Trump's numbers weren't great either, right? He had a low of 17%. I think this is both moving average and individual polls. Trump had, or the government had basically a 17% approval rating under Trump. And if you look at the individual polls, a high of 27%, which is honestly pretty bad. But if you look at Biden, it's even worse. His highest number is 24%, which is a little bit less than Trump at his highest number when it comes to individual polls, but his lowest is a little bit worse as well. It's at a 16% moving average for not only, it's at a 16% approval rating for not just the moving average, but also for the individual polls. This is less than Trump's lowest level, right? That was at like 17. And I think now Obama, the individual poll average there said 10%, and now there is 14%. But considering how high it was at certain points too, that kind of seems like a fluke. But this is pretty bad when we look historically. Like, we're like Ishmael over here because we're in the depths. Like, this is bad. This is pretty bad. And it gets worse. It gets worse because public sentiment is one thing, but concrete, financial and economy statistics are also another thing. Now, Joe Biden, it's kind of hard to see in like the scale of everything, but Joe Biden has like raised the national debt in a pretty bad way. So, $31.79 trillion in debt when he took office. I'm guessing is around that time. Brought us up $3 trillion. Now, to be fair, this is nowhere near as bad as Trump, where if we go to Trump, let's do 2016. 2016, $24.87 trillion in debt when Trump left office. We were at $31.79 trillion. So Trump was far worse when it comes to national debt than Joe Biden, it looks like. But Joe Biden still has not done a great job. He more or less just stemmed some of the bleeding, but not all of it. So I am not going to give Joe Biden positive marks on that front. And also, to be fair, I think Trump, a lot of that explosion in national debt was probably due to stimulus checks, I would imagine. But so if we didn't have COVID, then Trump might not have been as bad, but still, it shows poor judgment on Trump's part, in my opinion. But not just that. I think one thing that's on the forefront of a lot of people's minds is illegal immigration. Now, the Center for Immigration Studies published a study in 2022 where they predicted this. If current trends are allowed to continue, the number will soon surpass the number before COVID-19. And guess what? They were right. As America First Policy is pointed out, this is the worst year on record for legal immigration, with a record-setting 3.2 million illegal aliens. Now, I decided for the purposes of this video to not talk about crime stats, in part because a lot of crime is kind of sort of the fault of each state. Like if a state decides to go easy on crime, you can't really blame Joe Biden for that. And also when it comes to federal crime, I didn't really see some very helpful charts that would have made it easy to contextualize what violent crime nationwide has been looking like over the past several years. So that's why I decided not to focus on crime. I know that some people are very concerned about crime in light of illegal immigration. I just don't have, easily interpretable stats for you. I mean, I know we did a video about Germany a while ago where it was pretty easy to find stats along those lines from Germany. United States, I don't know why. Have no idea. But suffice it to say that the State of the Union is not particularly great right now, which is unfortunate. But I think, to be fair, this is most certainly not the worst it could possibly be. Considering that we have a president who has dementia, it is quite impressive that we haven't walked our way into a World War III type scenario. Also, while our economy is not doing the best, I think it should be acknowledged that unemployment has sort of leveled out. Same thing with inflation. Certainly work to be done there, but, things could also most certainly be worse on that front. Now, when it comes to who you're going to vote for president, well, you can't just be like, well, things are good enough, right? You have to consider who's probably going to take a look at these issues that you see here and improve on them the most. So that's what you guys all at home are going to have to do. Whether or not Joe Biden is going to do more for the economy, whether or not Joe Biden is going to take us back to where things were when he took office when it comes to things like inflation, for example, or we're going to go back to Donald Trump, who honestly, when it comes to fiscal policy, also has a sketchy record because he went and signed off on the COVID-19 stimulus packages. So it's really up to you as far as who you're going to vote for. But no matter what Joe Biden says, don't be fooled. It's certainly not like the end of the world when it comes to the United States of America, but it's certainly not necessarily the dawning of a brand new day in any positive sense of the phrase. So, don't let him fool you and make you think that like America is a land of milk and honey, because we're not right now. We're kind of staggering a bit after the hit that all of our policy decisions in light of COVID turned out. But you know what? At the end of the day, it is what it is. What can I say except pray a little harder and go vote? Right? That's all that we can really do. So I hope I made you guys feel a little bit better about the state of the country. Nah, just kidding. I don't care. I just wanted to tell you guys the truth. I don't care how it makes you feel.